I'm so excited because today we're going to get to hear from another couple, a couple that has been married for over 44 years and has been dealing with addiction and even infidelity, and their perseverance, their fortitude, and how God can give you the strength to just keep going, even in the midst of some very, very difficult situations, and how God's grace can, especially through forgiveness, bring powerful healing into your own individual life and into your marriage. Sharon and Orlando, thank you so much for joining us. Let's dive right in. I
Sure.
would actually love to just start off by hearing a little bit more about how you two met,
Okay.
and how that kind of progressed to marriage.
Okay. Well, I was working at the Marion Press,
Oblates,
which
yeah.
was the Oblates printing press where they made the Our Family magazine.
Okay.
And I was working as a stock girl there. Orlando was going in for a priest. He was a novice.
Thinking about it.
Yeah, thinking about
it. Just starting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
during the whole time he was there, well, there was about 11 of them, I think, at that time.
Novice.
11 young guys there, and I wasn't interested in finding no guys, so I said this was great. I could go over there and just be myself, and so I'd go over there and work, but sometimes when I'd be out there stocking the shelves in the store, he'd come over and snoop around the thing like he's trying to find a book, but he'd be following me. And the one time I had to go over to a garage just opposite of the building just so that I could get a stock of Christmas cards that I had to send out, wrap up and send. So I went over there. Well, he buys the book and comes over to the building to see where I went. He comes in there. I never thought anything of it until I was ready to leave. And then I thought, if I come out of here and he comes out of here, somebody's going to be thinking something's up. And so he goes out the other way, but I come out the way I went in and happened to run into two of the other novices and another worker there. And they go, there better not be anybody else in there. And I'm thinking, oh no.
But I waited in the building.
He waited and then he went out the front. Well, that was it. The rumor went around the whole place about us, but nothing ever happened. Yeah. But there was one old religious brother living there, and he always called me Orlando's girl. And I could never figure out why. He always called me Orlando's girl, but him and me never got along.
No, that never started. No.
Because he didn't like animals, and I rode to work on a horse. And I tied out back of the building, and I'd go to work and then ride home on it. And he would say things that would get to me, like behind my back. I could hear him saying to the other, how can anybody ever have affection for an animal? And I was ready to clout him. So we really didn't have much in common. And then was about a year. No, you weren't even there a year.
I kind of lasted until February, and then I went back to the farm. It just wasn't for me.
So he quit, and I didn't see him anymore. But
then the next summer,
you came up for Brother Louis' anniversary into the brotherhood, and he'd come over to my place because I was only a half-hour drive from there, and he come over just to fill in time till the supper started and the mass. And I said, where are you going? He goes, oh, it's a Brother Louis' anniversary. And I said, oh, well, I'll go. And so I got in the vehicle with him, and we went over there, and I never realized it until I got into the yard again. I go, here we are together again.
All the priests.
I go, they're going to say something.
Brothers and the other novices.
And of course, one of his other novice guys told him when he quit that he said the devil was getting him. That's why he was leaving. It was because of the girls. He said he's got you. And then we show up for the supper, and we're sitting there, and I'm sitting beside him, and the guy takes the potatoes and he slams them on his dish, and he goes, the devil got you. But then again, we didn't go out either right then, and he went off to Kelsey.
Yeah, Saskatoon schooling.
Yeah. But he came back at the end of the spring when one of the other novices from the year later was going to leave, and he come over to visit him, and he told him, well, he said, let's go visit her.
And that's when it kind of
so
started.
We went over. They came over. We went to the lake and looked around out there. And they came back. I put on a little barbecue out back. And after that, this other guy said to him, "Well, why don't you keep going out with her?"
Yep.
But it wasn't until your brother made a bet. Well,
yeah. Then my brother, went to the same
that's
school.
That's what started it.
In Saskatoon, and he never went out with anybody. So I said, "We'll have a bet. Who gets the first girlfriend or goes out with a girl?"
I was on a bet.
Yeah.
So he did actually find somebody, and then, well, that's when you were around. So then I kind of latched onto this thing. So it was more off a bet. So then things developed after that.
Yeah.
But it
took a long time for me, though.
He didn't. It took him 6 months to say he even liked me. But we only saw each other like once a month.
Yeah, that's because I was looking for the perfect girl.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Perfect,
Okay.
yeah.
Of course, every man looks for the perfect girl.
He said that I had short hair. He didn't like girls in short hair. He said I had a deep voice.
Deep voice.
He told me all the things he didn't like about me.
Wow. Okay.
But I knew after the first few times. Well, before I went out with him, I said there's got to be something we have in common. I said, well, our faith. I said, okay, we have the same faith. And then the first thing he asked me to was a dance. And I go, okay, we've got something in common.
Yeah, we can dance together.
Yeah, so that was good. And after a couple of dates, I knew I was going to marry him.
Yeah.
But I waited 6 months. I didn't say nothing because it took him 6 months to say he liked me.
Yeah.
And then a
long wait. And then when he told me, I cried.
Oh, I can imagine after 6 months wait.
Yeah, and then it was a whole year we'd gone out.
It went out for a year.
And then what happened, my brother was killed in a car accident. And he came up and he kind of helped my family doing the driving for everybody and stuff for the funeral. Because
that was you're very close to the brother.
Yeah, him and me were close. And so he came up and he helped with it. And the morning of my brother's funeral, while I was feeding the dogs in the kennel, he asked if I wanted to marry him.
Wow.
So I proposed on the morning of her brother's favorite
the
friend's
barking
funeral.
Of the dogs.
You couldn't lose, really. That's just terrible. The more people we tell that to, they go, "You what?"
Said I lost my brother. Now I don't know if I want to lose my boyfriend. But we waited that year, and then that year we went and it was the week of after my brother died. We went up to Saskatoon to visit his wife, who was still in the hospital, and we picked out a ring, but they didn't size it couldn't get it back until fall. So, so we got it in September, and I was quite excited. We got my new rings, and so we went out for Subway. He came up and picked me up, and we went out to Subway, and we're sitting there eating our lunch, and he looks at me and he says, he goes, "I know I'm meant to get married." He goes, "I just don't think it's to you."
Yeah, we were engaged.
Wow.
So I said, "Well, do you want your ring back?"
I was sort of having cold feet.
I don't know. Yeah. So I told him to go out and speak to his spiritual director he had when he was in novitiate.
Yeah.
And while I walked up to the grotto at the Scholasticate and said some prayers and waited to see what the answer would be, he come back and said, his spiritual director told him,
"Grow up, you immature little whatever." He wasn't very happy with it.
He said, "You just got cold feet."
Yeah.
So we went on with having our wedding. So
yep.
Oh, wow.
Was a beautiful day too. It was April 19th of 1980, and it was about 22 above. Beautiful weather.
Amazing.
Yeah.
My husband and I got married on April 22nd. So very close to the same time.
Yeah. So
amazing. 22 degrees in April in Saskatchewan.
Yeah. It was like summer.
That's miraculous.
But we had really good times because I was at the farming, like with Dad and two brothers, and then every once or maybe twice a month I'd come up to North Balford and we just have a great time because
we had to put a lot of things in a weekend.
It was so much different because our family's so serious and work, and it was more cheerful being up here with her side of her side of the family.
Yeah.
He said, if we broke up, he says, I'd still come and be with your family. I said, no, you wouldn't. No.
You don't get to keep them.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So Orlando, I'm actually curious because I mean, she knew fairly early on.
Yeah.
When did it click for you that Sharon was?
Not until the second. Well, it's a good year, a good 6 months. The second into the first year. Yeah.
Yeah.
A year later, basically.
Yeah.
And it was slow. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there like a moment that where you?
Well,
after where did you decide? Like, how did that decision come?
After asking 14 girls to go out with him and they refused, he said, "Well, I've got one."
I was going to Kelsey, Saskatoon, was taking a course in mechanics, and yeah, they had dance every month, and I was there again, always looking for the perfect number, whatever. And but she was always there for me. So
did you tell her?
Hey,
what you said about the dances?
Yeah, but the first year I never had a good chance of.
No.
Never really met anybody. So then I told Sharon.
Well, he told me first when
time it right.
Whenever I come to Saskatoon while he's there, he says, just call me, we'll go out.
Yep.
And I found out later what he told me is that when I'd call him and he'd go, oh, her again.
Well, you came up the one time when there was a dance, so I was kind of busy. And
yeah, I was in the way.
But I didn't think I asked him. So then I told her.
So he takes me to the bus depot when I had to go home. And he's saying how, yeah, life's going to be different this year. He said, I'm thinking of changing my ways. He says, I'm going to ask all the fat and ugly girls to the dances from now on. And he goes, I'm going to have to ask you one of these days.
I should have waited another 30 seconds, another minute. I should have waited another minute. Maybe.
Yeah, it's like, oh wait, those two are meant to come together.
So I go, okay, we'll see you.
But I never picked up on that. She remembered all these years, but not me.
Would you say that, that confidence that you had of just like, this is the one I'm going to marry is kind of what held you through the roller coaster of
because I know there was one time I was looking at him and I'm thinking, I don't know if this is the guy I should marry. And then I went up and I had a prayer was in total confidence to God and stuff. And I just said, Lord, if it's to be, let me know. And it was almost like his cold feet. It just kind of went away. And I go, this is the one I'm supposed to. And usually when I go out in front of people, I would be so nervous. I thought, I don't know how I'm going to be a bride. When I was a bridesmaid, I just shook.
Yeah.
And I thought, to be a bride. But when my dad drove me into the wedding that morning, he looks at me and he goes, how are you doing? I said, I feel good.
Yeah.
So Sharon had that confidence. To me, it was more that God put her in my life. Things are so different from what my background has been. So this has got to be a good thing. So if she would have been able to look in the future, I would have been thrown out with a dishwater.
Well, things started like after we got married. We went on our honeymoon. And on our honeymoon, I had the worst demonic dreams I've ever had in my life.
Yeah,
it was like there was this door and there was a hole in the door and Satan's hand with claws was coming through and he was trying to grab me.
Yeah.
And I just prayed him away. I wake up sweating. And later when I had talked to one of my spiritual directors, she said that was pretty much Satan saying he had a hold of him and he was after me. But I didn't understand what it was yet that was going on. And
because I had a lot of issues. I had a lot of issues coming into marriage.
And coming from my father's household, which my dad was very God-filled, and under his headship it was God-fearing, and then went under his headship, which is what I went into, and there was things that the devil wanted to work with. So
we look back at that now, and that was very real, like what she had in that dream. It makes sense. It makes sense now.
Like, what did that feel like? Like when you were waking up from these dreams?
Terrifying.
It was scary, but it's like from the time I was little, like I'd have scary dreams like that, like the devil was trying to torment me, and I would just pray and pray, and wake up praying, and it seemed to console me. So Yeah.
So you had been prepared.
Yeah, I
really,
guess
in
he
a
was
way.
preparing me all
Yeah.
along. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess it was in our 7th year of marriage,
Yeah, 7th, 8th year, then things got
just going
tough.
into the 7th
Real
year.
tough.
I had some severe pains in my side when we were first married, and it took about a year and a half for them to figure out what it was. I had to get an operation to go in and explore what was going on, and I had infection in an inflamed tube. So they treated me, and supposedly it was supposed to have been taken care of. But when my second daughter was born, um, I slipped and fell in the basement stairs, and when I hit, it triggered it again, and it seemed to come back again. I was getting that pain again. So I thought, well, okay, we'll go get it done again. We'll get the operation. So I booked the operation. But before I went in, our neighbor lady, we lived out at the Scholasticate right beside some retired sisters, our children's nanny. she comes over and she was all excited. She said, oh, she says, I went into this prayer meeting in town, she said, and they prayed over my phlebitis and it's all better.
Yeah.
And she said, you should try it. And I thought, well, okay, I've never been there, but I'll go. And I went into the prayer meeting, and well, it was a different experience for me.
Prayer meeting, yeah.
I'd never been to one before, and I kind of thought, these guys are a little loony. I'm not going back again. But I was there the next week again, but what they kept saying to me was, you got to forgive your dad for something. And I couldn't think of anything because my dad and I were quite close, and I don't ever remember anything that he did that would make me have to forgive him. And they said it a few times. So I went home. They said, just go home. God will put it on your mind. So I was taking the kids for a walk in the wagon the one morning, and it just came to my head. It's just like, you got to forgive your dad for making you pray over your dead grandma. Because when my dad's mom died, and this was a long, long time ago, they would dress them up like in black dresses and hairnets and had them in the coffin. And I was really small, and we were supposed to kneel on the bench before over the coffin and pray for him, and like all of them did. But when I went there, I was terrified. I was terrified of the way she looked. I had nightmares, and I ended up with a fear of death. And when my brother died years later, I couldn't even look in the coffin.
Yeah.
And I had this fear of death, nightmares of coming upon an accident on the highway and being terrified of seeing people dead.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyhow, I went to the prayer meeting. I go, I know what it is. I have to forgive my dad for making me pray over my dead grandma. So took care of that.
Then,
I went home, no more pain.
It was healed.
No more nothing. They canceled the operation, everything. But when I told him about what had just happened, he goes, there's something about this forgiveness thing.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with charismatic.
He goes, there's something about this forgiveness thing. So then he said he had to ask my forgiveness for something that he'd done behind my back.
Yeah, that touched me quite a bit because she went through a big healing. So then I was being freaked out. This was, something was happening. So I thought, okay, now's the time to kind of get serious about things. And so, yeah. Then I come forward with, what
you told me that you had
been sexually abused when I was in.
No, you didn't tell me that yet.
Not then?
No, you didn't tell me that then. Then you just told me the things that you did behind my back, like the drinking and the porn stuff. And
I started with that. Okay.
Yeah, different things like that. It was mild, but it was enough that I felt kind of betrayed, and I couldn't look at him. And
yeah, because I come into the marriage and had a lot of problems with, well, back then pornography. It wasn't like nowadays, but you had to really access it somehow.
Yeah.
And just perverted mind. A lot of issues that way. So yeah, I shared that, and
I had thought, I thought he could do no wrong, which I should have looked at him in a different way, in a more human way, instead of like Jesus. Like Jesus can do no wrong, but man can be weak. And anyhow, it hurt me to know that he would do things behind my back.
Yeah.
And for a couple of days, I kind of wondered, what are we going to do? But then we had some friends that we had met, And I said, we got to go in there and pray with them.
Because it threw you hard. It hit her hard.
Yeah.
Because I was involved with, looking at pornography, etc., and then having problems with, your self-pleasuring yourself, etc., etc. But then, with the friends we went.
Different things like that. And then, so we phoned them up, and it was his birthday, the guy that lived there. And so we said, well, we'll come in. Well, we get there, there's a couple there visiting them.
Yeah.
And we come in, and I'm going, oh, this may not work. So we sit and we have a casual talk with them. And at the moment I said to them, we're going to have to go. The couple said, I think we better go now. And the other couple was going to say, I think they should go.
Because
so
they,
it was
they
all
knew something was going really bad because of her reaction.
Yeah.
So it was real serious.
Yeah. So we sat, and they wanted to know what was up. And so we had filled him in what he'd said all along. And then I looked at the woman that was praying with us, and I said to her, I said, well, at least he hasn't fooled around with anyone else, because he told me he didn't. And they were praying a little more, and I was just sitting there, and the woman looked at him, and he said, it was like Jesus.
Like, I was never going to tell her what I was going to tell her, but she looked at me, and that's when I had that kind of God moment, just her eyes looked at me, and it was like Jesus. It was like I was at the other side of the room, and it just freaked me right out. I says, I can't, I have to be honest here.
Wow.
So I said, yeah, there is something else. Well, that finished it. She knew what it was right away. I was unfaithful in my marriage. You just,
and at that moment, it was like the devil just took a knife into my gut, and it was just aching, and I collapsed on the floor, and I was crying, and I go,
it was weird because I had this just release. I felt really great. I just got rid of it.
He was happy. I didn't want him touching me, and
you were a basket.
I was laying on the floor crying, and then the woman with us, she asked God if she could take on some of my pain, and she was holding me, and she started crying. So the two of us are crying. And then the husband was just praying up a storm.
And I'm sitting back here, oh man, I really screwed things up here. Sharon's going to walk out of the house. That's it. Our marriage is done.
They said if they would have let me out, if I would have gone out of the house, they said that would have been the end of everything.
And they knew that. Yeah. They knew that.
So they stood, and 2 hours they prayed. Yeah. 2 hours they prayed. And at one point then the husband read the scripture about Moses holding his hands up in the battle. And every time they were raised, they were winning, and every time they fell, they were losing. Yes. So he said to set him on the rock, and then Aaron and him held his hands up. Well, he told me to raise my hands. Well,
you weren't going to do
I couldn't lift them off the floor. They were like rocks. Yeah. And so the fellow told him to grab one, and he grabbed one, and they got about halfway, and it was just like, as soon as it got there, it was just like, poof, something opened up, and it was like fresh air blowing through me. Wow. And it was like all the pain was gone, and it was just this beautiful moment of like everything was so fresh.
Yeah, and you were able
because
to
before that, the devil would, every time they would say something, he wanted me to laugh and tell them
it's over,
something different. Yeah. And then I wouldn't say it, so then my gut would just hurt like crazy. So but when that moment of me getting my hands part way up, and it was just like open air, and then he told me to turn and forgive Orlando. Mm-hmm. And when I turned and forgave him, the woman holding me, she said her spirit leapt inside of her like the baby in Elizabeth's womb. Just such joy. And for a whole month after that, we were like flying high. We were like newlyweds. It was so good.
So from a moment it was total screw up, totally hopeless, and then all of a sudden God, just worked everything out.
Yeah.
And we were in bliss. But then the hard work had to come after that.
He gave you a bit of a reprieve.
Yeah, I still had myself to
we actually did renew our marriage. We went through just like as if it was a whole wedding again, and
we did
and stuff. But we had a little bit more cleaning up to do, because what happened was they said that when when they things were happening with him again, and they said what happened was they cut the root off of what the devil was doing in him, but they left the root to regrow.
Oh, yes.
They didn't replace it, and so he was having reoccurrences of
I was being tempted again,
things,
just the same way I was all the other.
And it got to the point where I thought, he's doing things behind my back again. I don't feel like I'm even a part of it. He kept wanting to run in and see Jesus again in this woman. And it's almost like he wanted to see her, and I was no part of it anymore. And so I sat down the one day, and I opened up my Bible, and I don't even know what it said. He just said to write it down, and I got a pen, and my hand was going faster than I could, just writing down what he wanted me to put. And then he said, stop. And he goes, give it to Orlando.
Yeah.
So he walks in the door, and I hand him the paper. I had no idea what it said. And he read it, and then he goes, I guess I have to tell you. And then he said...
Yeah, then I had to share the rest of my story of my whole life.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's when I shared with you when I was in grade 7, grade 8, I was abused sexually by another person, a guy. And then that just mixed my brain up, et cetera, et cetera. I got into sexual perversion. I got into,
and that was the root that was growing again.
Everything.
And
yes.
What
was that like? What was that moment like for you?
When he told me, for me, I said it was like, why him? Like, why was it him that? But then after I thought, finally, we've gotten to the root of it.
Yeah.
Finally, we can deal with it. And we did have to find a good spiritual director that would help him.
Yeah, and then the group of men.
She put him with a group of
and they
real
almost
strong
like
men.
Not AA, but it was similar, but in a Christian sense. And they walked through me and just I it was tough. It was tough. I was like when I was working. From what I saw, every 5 minutes, Satan would just be throwing images in my mind.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go back there and just, okay, we'll go back to the way it was. But
So they had to take him back to the beginning and start him fresh again and heal him up. And
so that
made a big difference.
Yeah, and it worked good. And
how long did that take for you?
That would have been...
that would have taken...
Well, we were at school.
Well, the whole
5 years we were there.
Yeah, but the whole 6 months with the guy, with the with the men there, and then the counselor. So 6 months to 3/4 of a year,
Yeah.
And I
very
worked
intensive, very
and I worked on it, and I understood what was happened and what took place, and I got just into perversion and the selfish habits I had, and then treating her just as a sex object, et cetera, et cetera. So that took a while. But then I don't know if I really got the real healing. I don't know.
Yeah,
it didn't end there. I hung in there.
But there was still something that wasn't fully healed, because he started into drinking.
That's drinking. It's kind of like switched over.
Yeah. It was like take it to another stage. And so what had happened is when we were first married, we lived in a small town, and he farmed with his family, and that was for about 2.5 years. We had our first daughter. We moved back here to North Battleford and lived at the Scholasticate there in a little house.
5 years there, basically.
Yeah, and during the 5 years there, that's when we met the prayer group and had the healing and stuff. And then God said to us the one night, he was sending us to a place where they didn't believe the same as us, but he wanted us to be silent witnesses. So what's he do? He puts us back to...
So I went back, worked with the two brothers and dad, and I was...
And that was hard, because our whole life we needed more family time, and we would spend time together here walking with the kids and stuff. But when we went back to the farm, it was back into that where everything was spent at the farm, and
just work.
The only time the kids saw him was on Sunday. So if any time he come home during the week, the kids would go, "Is this Sunday?" Because that's the only time they saw him. But then his drinking kind of took over, I guess, being back in an atmosphere where his problems were.
Then I substituted everything instead of just getting on with a new life. I got into drinking. And then everything started again, like
Mm-hmm.
backing up. So you get into a little bit of pornography again, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that just went south, not good.
And along with the pornography and the drinking comes the lying.
Yes.
Anytime
of course.
anytime you'd ask him and he would lie, and then you'd catch him lying and you'd confront him, and eventually he would tell you, but then you go, yeah, but you just lied about it.
Yeah.
So, but the kids and I used to, because he'd come home in such bad moods. One of the priests that I talked to said, well, try and greet him, with like honey, like joyful stuff when he comes in the door. So we'd greet him with, songs and hugs and
just
stuff.
More positive,
But that didn't seem to work. So
yeah, when you're dealing with depression, right? It's it's not just psychological issues that
it's
are
a
going
lot
on.
deeper, yeah.
Right. So
yeah. So he got to the point where he was drinking so bad that he would
seriously drinking.
He would pass out, get really sick a lot. And
so I went to AA.
The one night I come home and I had told him where we were and what we did, and he was kind of acting like, yes, he's heard, but then he fell asleep, and in the morning he says, so what did you do last night? And I go, you never heard a word I said. I said, the drinking's getting bad. I says, you can either get help while I'm still here, I said, or you can get help when I'm gone. And that was enough to.
So then I started going to AA.
To get him to AA, yeah.
And that took 3 times. I went to AA, smartened up for a couple of months, but I went back drinking. Kept going to AA. The third time, it took me 3 times to really.
It wasn't until you did the in-depth steps where it come to the part where he had to ask.
And then you guys sat me down, Sharon and the kids sat me down, said, next time you drink, you're gone, Dad. That's it. You're out of here. It's the end of the marriage. So I knew this was real serious. And so I
didn't see the real change until when he got to that step in the 12-step program with it, where they have to go back and repair and apologize to all the people they'd hurt during their drinking.
Oh, yes.
And so he went to all his family members and then all the kids and then to me, and then you could see a change coming. Yeah.
What was that experience like for you to have to go back to everybody and apologize?
When I look back at it now, it's good in certain degree, and then certain degree it's not. I've had basically 80% was super, say 85% was great. I didn't say too much, but I said, I get into problems and the marriage just about went on the rocks, et cetera, and I got over my drinking problem, and so I just basically said, well, forgive me for doing this, et cetera. So more of a forgiveness thing. A couple of the cases I went to did not go well. So I wish I just would have left it not on the shelf, but just sometimes you just shouldn't even go there. It didn't turn out too well. They didn't accept it.
Yes.
So, but that's okay. No. I was able to put up with that.
You get it off of your chest,
Yeah,
it helped me. Yeah. So it helped me out a lot. There again, I get so far with my healing, and then I would kind of go on a plateau, and then you start backtracking.
Yeah.
I never went back drinking. Like I've been 20 years now.
This is your 19th year of sobriety.
Yeah. But I still have to work on your, and that's why it's such a blessing of sharing it, because the faith is the main thing, eh?
And then we went in 2010. We went to the Bible school in New Zealand.
Yes, that
first married couple to go to the school there.
Okay, and so how many years had you been married at this point?
That was 30.
That'd be 30 years.
30 years. Yeah, 30 years.
Yeah.
Because we had our 25th anniversary, and then we had our 30th down there. Yeah.
So, and that gave an opportunity for us to really focus, or me especially, and there in New Zealand, I was able to really put things up, basically at the foot of the cross, and say, okay, what happened to me is what happened to me, and put the blame on it, and just get with it. Put it at the foot of the cross and get on with your life. So that really helped. And
So it was like a real detachment. Like
Yeah,
that's
and
kind
I
of
was
where
able to really
the
forgive
ties were really
the
severed.
bad things that happened to me,
Yeah.
and that wasn't the end of the story yet. But
No. No.
but I was able to come at peace with that.
Okay.
And like you said, when you go in the 12-step program, I've been through that, and that just solidified it. So it really helped. I found out that the next thing that bothered me a lot was how I hurt Sharon all those years. Like, just put her through heck, not being honest, being dishonest, and then going back and doing the same thing over again, and then drinking problems, and going back. So then just 2 years ago, they sent me on down to Kelowna, wasn't it?
Grace to grief, grief to grace.
Greece to grief. So it was kind of like a trauma weekend retreat, 4 to 5 days actually. Yeah. That was an eye opener for me because it was very, very serious issues there with people that have been abused, et cetera, just bad stuff. But boy, it was very good for me, and I
come
realized
back different anyhow.
how your actions can hurt somebody. That helped me with what kind of come to terms with what feeling guilty with what I what I did to my wife, and be able to at least accept it and ask for more forgiveness and work at it.
Yeah. And even really learning how to forgive yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it still bothers me at times, or you wish you just wouldn't have went that far. But well, it's something you just. But there again, the faith, that's the only thing. We never would have stayed together.
There was 2 times when we moved back to the farm, when he started into his drinking and being away. There was 2 times I was going to leave. And I can remember the one day I said, okay, I'll tell him this Sunday. But I said, as I drove to town, I put on the cassette player in the vehicle, and Evie's song was on, and I'd heard it tons of times, but for some reason that day, that one stuck out to me. It said, be thankful for the things that you got. The good things you got aren't a lot, but to some are just a dream. And I'm going, okay, God, you want me to stay? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then there was a second time, because like when we went out to the farm there, it was like being put on a desert. I had no more.
Exactly what it sounded like.
Yeah, I had no support, no nothing in that area, because we'd left our prayer group people, and so I was by myself.
Just work.
And I was ready to go. So the second time I was ready to go, I thought, okay, I'll tell him after church that I'm leaving. And I went to church, and the whole sermon and the whole readings were about put up with what you've got because Jesus did. And I'm going, okay, you want me to stay again? So
yeah. And I was totally out in the blue about this. I didn't have a clue. I thought everything was going fairly well, but
it's still going smooth. She's still there.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so I know that you mentioned your faith, right? Like being a really big part of this whole journey. Would you say, are there like some key points, some key moments just throughout the marriage where your faith really shone through, and where that relationship with God kind of even transformed or grew?
Yeah, because when I first found out about what he did, I had lost all feelings for him.
Yeah, that's
all feelings totally for him.
That lasted for 2 years.
But
totally nothing. She couldn't even touch me, basically.
Yeah.
But we
was bad.
We never expressed it anyway in public, kind of thing, because our kids were never affected by any of it.
Yes.
Like the kids, for some reason, God had just protected them from anything, and they weren't affected by any of it. And
because we didn't show, we weren't fighting or doing anything, but that's our feelings for each other. There was nothing there. And
but I can remember asking God, I said, Lord, I just want those feelings back that I had for him before. I want to feel that again. And God said, love is not a feeling, it's a choice. And I go, okay, then I choose to love him. And it wasn't until the day that we were over at my mom and dad's with one of our kids' ponies, and the pony bucked him off.
Yeah.
And my heart just went, oh, don't you hurt him.
Oh yeah, man. I forgot
And
about
I'm
that.
going, okay, there's still some of that there.
Yeah.
No, I did get hurt. I fell.
Yeah. Yeah. Watching him hit the ground, I'm going, oh
that
no.
wasn't fun. But anyway.
It had to be a choice, though.
But it came in stages. Like, that 8th year, we stopped.
Yeah.
Was totally not going to exist anymore. And that God brought us through that.
Mm.
Then, of course, when I got into alcohol, and then through that next stage, and yeah, we just we always.
It was like God
was always there. We
heal
kept
him.
praying together. We kept praying together. That was a very important thing.
Yeah.
Saying the rosary. She always was saying the rosary. It's tough. It's like just hung in there.
The other thing too is we've never stopped holding hands.
Yes.
No.
That was such a big piece for my husband and I.
Yeah.
It was actually just like keeping that little physical connection.
Yeah.
Because when you feel that betrayal, like there is this instinctive gut wrenching.
Don't touch me.
I want to pull away, right? Which is not of God.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the choices I made. As well
and you
as
have to make a mental choice at times to do that because Satan would just love it just to go the other way.
Well, even at night, we
Yeah.
still have to have that connection.
Yeah.
His foot has to touch my foot at night.
Yeah.
That's
We can't go to sleep until those feet find each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the only way you can survive those 30-degree
Yeah.
days in the summertime anyway. But
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the faith's a big thing.
And for me, it was like God was a big part of my life, and when he hurt me, part of me wanted to hurt him back.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, I'm not ruining my relationship with God because of what he's done.
Yeah.
And so it was just pray it through.
Yeah.
Pray it through.
So even just like your love for God is really what kept you from,
Yeah, that's a good way to explain it.
right? It's just as hurt as I am, I still love God enough to keep doing, because I don't want to hurt God. And you can't hurt your spouse without hurting God.
Yeah.
Kind of. So there's.
Yeah, and then you go through, okay, we just got to stick with it because God's going to work this out somehow.
Yeah.
And there's so much more joy if you deal with it and put up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because to give up, it doesn't help it at all.
No.
Mm.
So I'm curious, what is it like? If a young couple, let's say, is listening to this story and they're going through the same thing, right? And they're in the midst of it and they don't know how to move forward. What advice would you give? Okay, so first of all, to the person struggling with the addiction, whether it's the wife or the husband, what kind of wisdom would you like to share with them?
Yeah, I would say on my behalf, the addiction, you got to get help. You got to get counseling. You got to get. You're never gonna. I would never understood it myself ever, and it it can get healed just all of a sudden, but that normally doesn't happen.
And you don't usually do it yourself.
No,
it's usually somebody has to help you. Yeah,
and through we've got the group of men, they walked me through it. One spiritual counselor walked me through it. Then, again, we went to New Zealand. That furthered it, et cetera, et cetera. And now we're saying
God
the
just put the
rosary every
people
day.
there, yeah.
We pray. We always did pray together. That's something you never wanted to do at times, but we just forced ourselves to. That was a big thing. Same as, going to church every Sunday, if not more often, and that was never a question. I mean, we both had a longing to do that.
And the two big things, saying sorry and forgiveness.
Yeah.
The forgiveness is what brought my healing and brought the whole thing to head.
Yeah.
And without forgiveness, I mean, it just eats you.
It's hard on Sharon because with me, I all this is almost like brand new stories to me because I forget.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a man thing, but she does not forget. She can remember everything from the first. Everything. If you want, we probably could write 4 books on it. Just everything she remembers. I some of this I can't.
And what I used to do too, when I was at the farm, there in those years where I was by myself, all alone with the kids.
You went through.
I decided, well, I need to talk to God, and a good way of doing it sometimes to get it off of your chest is to write a book. So I wrote a book to Jesus all the time.
Your journal.
Any time that I had problem, I'd write it down and then I go, oh, it's done, And then later, when we come back from New Zealand, I wish I would have taken the books with me because there was a lot of really hard things in there that I had to deal with and a lot of good things. But when I went through the healings in New Zealand, it was like, let's let it go. So I wanted to burn them. So when I come home, that's what I did. I prayed over them and burnt them.
Oh, wow.
So those are gone. All those.
And I always wanted to read. It's always in the top shelf of her
I said, go
closet
ahead.
thing there.
You may not like
it was about this thick already.
Yeah.
And I no, not tonight. I'll do it tomorrow night. We'll look at it. But it's a good thing. I think God protected me in that because it would have hit me hard because it did hurt her a lot, big time.
Yeah.
She was in serious depression at the time.
We had met some people that come over wanted to do Bible studies with us. I think more or less to save us, and but when they started hearing some of our story. And the one guy goes, well, who was there to help you? I said, me and Jesus. And they go like, how did you do it? How did you?
Yeah.
I go, well, Jesus was always there for me when I needed him. So through all those hard times, because.
That's fascinating because it was the same for me as well. Like, I mean, that kind of isolation, almost being on an island unto yourself. Yeah. Like that's very much what happened with my husband and I as well. We were really isolated in a way
from each other,
from each other, but from community and from support.
Oh, I see. Yes.
And it was me and Jesus. I mean, he was literally the only person I had.
That's what you experienced.
But he provided. Like, I mean, he was there as long as I turned to him.
See, I could lose myself because I just go work. So if you're farming, you work all hours and you just work. So you can disappear.
And then that point where I sat down and Jesus wanted me to write it out, right? He told me that he would tell me every time he didn't. So God would fill me in on what I was missing with him, and then I could confront him, and then he would be able to.
Oh, when I was being sneaky.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she figured it out every time I said that.
I thought I was pretty good. He's telling me there's a problem there.
My husband thought he was pretty good at it.
Yeah, I was pretty good. I thought. I still think I was.
Yeah.
God takes care of that.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
There was one incident that kind of the kids really laughed because they had known after they got older and they went to Bible school.
We shared all this with our kids.
They needed to know some things to get their own healings and stuff. Even though they didn't know a lot of it, but they go, oh, that's where it comes from, kind of thing, But they were home the one day and we get a phone call from a video store. And they're asking, well, Orlando has this certain video out. And we're going, but that's a porn flick.
Yeah.
We go,
that could never happen.
And it was our daughter who had answered the phone. So, I mean, the kids know now. They're listening here. And so he comes home from work and I said, well, the video shop phoned and said that you still had this video out. He goes, no, I never got it. And then a few minutes later, you hear him in the bathroom talking.
What the hell are you guys doing?
I gave that to the blonde lady at the front of the...
And I did. I took it back. But the one lady's... Well, that was God working it out.
God kind of put that there so we would know so he could be confronted with it.
And I couldn't walk out of it because the movie was called Celestial Orgy, so our kids aren't that stupid. And I go, okay, I'm had it. That was not good. But he was talking in the bathroom, telling them at the store that he'd take it back, and I'm going, well, I thought you said you didn't have it.
Yes.
But that was the way God would reveal things all the time without
bring things into the light.
Yeah, because you couldn't hide it no more.
You get knocked on your head enough times.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because I do find that God will deal very individually.
Yep.
Right. With like, so for some people, right, being confronted, that's really what ends up bringing the healing about. For me, God did not allow me to confront my husband because it would have completely driven him away. Like, it would have broken the marriage, right? And so the way that all of that came about was very individual to my husband, but God is the one who led me in it, right? And just like he led you in the confrontations. And so that relationship with God really is so critical,
Yeah.
and learning to listen to him and learning to kind of maintain
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
this Q&A almost
Mhm.
like ongoing
Mhm.
with God, I find is such a
Yeah,
critical piece.
and the only way I learned something was to get hit in the face by something, you know. Like,
Yeah.
it's like when when I played hockey and I was in goal until I got hurt in goal, then I played good, you know. But I had to get hurt
Then there
first
was a
by the puck
motivation.
somehow.
Mhm.
Then I played like super
To
good.
watch that side.
So same thing with all my kind of goofing around our marriage, you know. God would just smack me good and big time.
Yeah. But in a charitable, loving,
through my wife,
way.
through my children,
Yes.
Yeah.
But it would put you on your feet, and that's how he dealt with me. With you, it was more, well, you were always just hung in there with prayer, and this will turn out good. So
Wow, what an amazing story of like forgiveness. Really, like that's really the one that stands out to me. The power of forgiveness, and how that really is what unlocked.
That's the big thing, forgiveness.
Everything.
Forgiveness and prayer. That's it. That is it. I mean, otherwise we were toast. That was it. And even just the other day here, because I got this operation on my shoulder and I had to take my first shower, we got to keep the water off it. So it's got so I figured this out and put saran wrap, and I had this duct tape, so I stuck it on the countertop in our island in the house. And of course, when I pulled it off, it pulled the wood off.
Oh no.
And I go, whoops, and not much of it, but you could feel it. So I thought, okay, she's gonna freak, and I did this. I should have never. I see you don't do that. So I kind of wrecked her part of her corner of her. So I got the sandpaper, fine sandpaper. It's smart. Got it all down smooth.
You sneaky again.
And I re-oiled it, so then look, nothing different. Well, 2.5 weeks later,
took one touch.
She goes, "What did you do to this island here?" And she knew right away, and I go, "Oh man, how did you ever figure that out?" So that's just a small story. How even though I was okay, I'm not going to tell her. Not that I had to tell her, but still, that's how it works. If you're open to that, God works everything out.
Yeah. And would you say that forgiveness was progressive? You probably had to forgive each other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it never ends.
God took us in steps. Like at one point, He'd heal him, and I was okay. Then He'd heal me, and he was okay. And it was kind of like a ladder. We just kind of, both of us weren't down at the same time. It was always like one would help the other as we went along.
Throughout the whole 40-some years, because even when I went down to this Kelowna to that 5 days of, my daughter said, "Dad, I'm going to pay for it." And there was, it wasn't cheap. That was like $1,200, and sending you to Kelowna.
Wow,
that's a major trauma retreat weekend. Yeah. I said, "Why are you doing this?" He says, "It's God telling me to get you in there." So and that helped me work out a lot of the, get more with forgiveness too.
One of the things about our last child, we'd had the 2 girls, and I was going to wait a little bit and then have a couple more, because we had wanted about 18 kids.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I'll wait a little bit. But I opened up the Bible the one day, and it was on Psalm 127, which says, "Behold, the son is a gift from God." And I'm going, oh, He wants us to have a son. So I went in, got myself checked. I got pregnant, and I knew it was going to be a boy.
Yeah, we never
but
did
the problem
check,
was that we were going through the one of the worst parts of his healing, like where he told me about his abuse. And I'm thinking, how is this going to affect our son?
Oh yeah.
Well, it did affect him in a way, because he was 8. We'd had the 2 girls, and I was going to wait a little bit and then have a couple more, because we had wanted about 18 kids.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I'll wait a little bit. But I opened up the Bible the one day, and it was on Psalm 127, which says, "Behold, the son is a gift from God." And I'm going, oh, He wants us to have a son. So I went in, got myself checked. I got pregnant, and I knew it was going to be a boy.
Yeah, we never
but
did
the problem
check,
was that we were going through the one of the worst parts of his healing, like where he told me about his abuse. And I'm thinking, how is this going to affect our son?
Oh yeah.
Well, it did affect him in a way, because he was 8 days overdue. He almost died while I was delivering him.
Yeah.
He was suffocating inside. The placenta was
Yeah.
hardened, so every push he was suffocating.
Oh.
And they finally pulled him out, but he ended up dyslexic. And they said what happened, because we took him to a a counselor, and she said what happened to him is he saw the world negative from inside the womb. It's like all the trouble we were going through, he felt that, and he did not want to come into the world. He thought it was so negative, and it flipped his spirit. So he saw things backwards. And so she prayed with him to reflip his spirit, and she said it can happen instantly. He'll come to normal or over time. And I mean, he still struggles with the reading, but he's doing really good.
Yeah.
But he said that that was what was the result of going through all this trauma with him in the womb.
Yeah.
He just saw the world negatively, and
Yeah.
It was a blessing to have children that are in the faith, and thank goodness, and I'm really grateful to God, because every once in a while they correct me. They kind of say, "Hey, Dad," for example, I say, "Well, because they have their, say, Christmas, Easter, their little shot of whiskey or whatever," and I say, "Well, I could do that now because God healed me." And they go, "No, Dad, you're 300 pounds. No, you're not. You're not there yet." Don't give us that. No, we don't let you away with it. I know better.
Yeah. It's just, it's a story filled with hope, really, for me, because, I mean, it was a long struggle, right? It's not like this was a quick fix. It was progressive.
Yeah.
There were many moments of deeper and deeper and deeper healing, many moments that were difficult.
And it's a continuous thing.
And it's a continuous thing, right?
Very
important, but also hopeful, because you're still in love, you're still beautifully married, you have children who are still faithful, and are very beautifully, so they've had their own healing, and so I'm just thinking for maybe some of the younger couples where maybe their children are still little and they're kind of worried or concerned about how that will all progress. It's hopeful to hear that that can happen.
And it's tough. It's tough for us to see, so many people that, they just quit. 7th year they have problems like we did. They just quit. They're done.
Yeah.
So they end up with a divorce, end up quitting. The kids are, it's a mess.
Yeah.
In the family. So many people, they just don't hang in there. If you just could somehow convince, just hang in to the next step, it's going to get bad again.
Yeah.
But hang in there and it'll get through it, and it just gets better and better. And it's still never, ever all wholly perfect, but you just keep working with it.
It's like Evie's song. Be thankful for the good things that you got. The good things that you got aren't a lot, but to some are just a dream.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to end. Wonderful. Thank you both so much. Wow. Very, very grateful that you guys have driven all the way out here to meet with me and to share this story.
That's great.
Thank you so much for your witness, Sharon and Orlando, for just being a testimony that longevity and perseverance and fortitude in marriage can bring about incredible results, and just a powerful witness of patience and love and surrender to the Lord in very, very difficult circumstances. God bless.